DC is back, baby! James Gunn is slapping the old reboot button on the Snyderverse, and they're bringing back all of your favorites. We got Batman, Superman, Frankenstein. Seriously, Frankenstein? But even though Jimbo announced all of these projects, we've got absolutely nothing about who's going to be playing these characters. And being the humble YouTuber that I am, I think it's time for me to step up to the plate and give my definitive list for who I think will be cast in the new DCU. Now, this list is just speculation. With that in mind, if any of these castings do come true, then I demand to be acknowledged. Witness me, DC. Witness me. And if any of these do not come true, which, let's be honest, that's the most likely scenario, you, watching this video, have to obliterate that like button and demolish the subscribe button like it's the Metropolis skyline in Man of Steel. Number 1. Wonder Woman. Don't get me wrong, I loved Wonder Woman in the Snyderverse. Besides in Wonder Woman 84, she basically sexually assaulted a man possessed by the soul of her dead boyfriend. And in an ideal world, I feel like Gal Gadot would still play Diana. But since they're rebooting everything with their version of Flashpoint, I'm just gonna swing for the fences. Now, this may be controversial, but I don't think it should be. Based on the look and background of the character and actor, I think that with enough prep time and character research, Gina Carano would make a good Wonder Woman. I know, I can hear people screaming at their screens now. But hear me out. Leave any political thoughts and preconceptions about any of the actors on this list at the door, and just think about how that person could play the role. Diana needs to be a strong leader and a physically formidable character. And no hate to Gal Gadot because she served in the Israeli army, but between somebody who was a former model and somebody who was a former UFC fighter with a larger, more physically imposing frame, it just makes sense to put Gina in instead. Coming from Paradise Island, where they are just a race of incredibly powerful warriors who spend all day training, it only makes sense to have somebody who looks like they've already lived that lifestyle. Plus, she has to be powerful enough to stand toe-to-toe with some of the baddest characters in DC. She has to be strong enough to take on a Kryptonian and even Darkseid if need be. So, from a purely aesthetic standpoint, having someone who can physically fill the role works for me. Number 2. Bane. Bane should be introduced to the DCU as soon as possible, and I know just the person to play him. James Gunn has a very strong connection with everyone from his days with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but none more than Dave Bautista. Just like with Wonder Woman, Dave Bautista with his incredible frame could play a crazy comic-accurate version of Bane. We would just need Tom Hardy to do the voice again. But we need this one to be special. We need Bane, the super genius, luchador mask-wearing, back-breaking psycho from the comic books, not a sauced-up green mute or Talia al Ghul's bodyguard. I think that Dave Bautista absolutely has the physical aspect locked down and would be ready and willing to jump back to work with James Gunn after Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I think the only thing that I would want to make sure is ironed out would be nailing the voice. Because honestly, that would be the most important part since we don't need to see Bane's face that much. Number 3. Nightwing. Now, we know that Batman will be coming with the Brave and the Bold, which we will discuss later on in this video, but I want to focus on the original sidekick, Bruce Wayne's first son, Dick Grayson. Jimbo said that we're going to be getting an established Bat family in this, so that made me jump straight to Nightwing. Which would be perfect since we are going to be getting a Batman who is old enough to have a son crusading around with him in the night. I'm thinking that we're going to have to get a Nightwing in his mid-30s, possibly Nicholas Hoult. Now, I know that he played Beast in the First Class X-Men universe, but I think he would be incredibly good as Dick Grayson. He would be able to play off of Batman with a father-son rivalry dynamic, and it would set tension up with Dick Grayson wanting to be his own man and get out of his surrogate father's shadow. Nightwing doesn't have to be as dark and brooding as Batman, but he does have to be incredibly acrobatic. If they bring in Nightwing, they have to focus on the physicality and speed of the character, and they would have to use many dynamic shots and really convey that he can move. I mean, the kid grew up in a circus and was an acrobat. They have to nail this. It's like his one thing. Number 4. Booster Gold. My all-time most anticipated DC property is finally coming. Years ago, it was rumored that DC was going to make a Booster Gold film, and at the time, people were speculating that Nathan Fillion would be the titular character. He has been known to play snarky and sarcastic, yet lovable characters in the past, and I think that would have made for an incredible film. However, that was almost 10 years ago. a lot has changed since then. And they are finally moving forward with the character, but with an HBO Max show in the film's place. This would be the perfect place to take another MCU alumni, with Chris Pratt crossing over the bridge to play Booster Gold. Now, I know that there has been some shade thrown at Chris Pratt recently for him being the voice of Mario, and soon to be the voice of Garfield the cat. But this is perfect casting. This needs to be a show about somebody coming back in time from the future who's just trying to make a name for himself. No powers, just technology. And is basically exploiting the modern day social media in order to clout chase off the most famous superheroes to become famous in the future. Plus, Pratt can play Booster almost like a cross between Star-Lord and Andy Dwyer. Booster Gold can be kind of a jerk with absolutely no idea what he's doing, but somehow Mr. Magoo his way through it, but gets smacked down with reality every once in a while. Number 5. Green Lantern. We are going to be getting 2 Green Lanterns in HBO Max's show coming soon. Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. I have been a longtime proponent of Jon Stewart and have been saying that he's the way to go for DC's live-action Green Lantern, based solely off of the nostalgia factor for the Bruce Timm and Paul Dini animated Justice League versions of the character. General audiences would be familiar with him, as well as Hal, but not for the right reasons, and would be able to enjoy having co-leads in the show. Personally, I think it would be nice to have Hal Jordan be played by someone like Chris Pine. I know we've seen him in the DCU before, but there's somebody else on this list who may be getting recast from their previous role. Chris Pine did a great job as Steve Trevor, and I think since he's a little older now, he would be able to play a great Hal Jordan, and play it almost like an older cop who has worked the same area for years, with Jon Stewart learning the ropes and giving Hal a renewed sense of hope for the future. I think for John, we need to cast someone like Winston Duke, or John David Washington. I know Duke has been in the MCU, and there's likely no way he'll be leaving anytime soon. His rendition of M'Baku is great, and as for John David Washington, he would be able to knock it out of the park. He has shown some good range in movies like Amsterdam, as well as Black Klansman, and I know that either one of these actors would be able to hit a home run with this role. Number 6. Frankenstein. Easy, Ron Perlman. He already looks like a monster. Number 7. Superman. Ah yes, the big blue Boy Scout, the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way, and the original superhero. There's been a lot of heat coming at DC recently due to the firing of Henry Cavill, and they are really going to have to hit a home run with this one to win back the public. We need somebody who can convey the humble upbringing of farm life, the wonder of being a fish out of water in a big city, and the quiet calm of knowing you are the toughest guy in the room. And that's why the world needs the newest Superman to be Nicolas Cage!
What did he say? Thanks a lot. Thank you, Agent K. Ladies and gentlemen, if you will, look right here.
In all seriousness, I think he would have been good in the 90s, when he was originally going to be playing Kal-El. But that ship has long since sailed. Plus, we already got 2 of the most amazing performances we will ever see in Willy's Wonderland and The Incredible Weight of Massive Talent. 2 of the greatest movies of all time, by the way. In all honesty, casting an unknown might be a bit better for this, but I would still be totally fine with casting an established actor. I lean towards someone like Matthew Bomber, or even possibly somebody a bit younger, like Decker Montgomery. I know that Bomber is in Doom Patrol, and Montgomery is known for playing more villainous characters with Billy from Stranger Things, but either one of them would be able to turn in a great performance. Number 8. The Flash. Since we are getting Flashpoint and getting a nice clean sweep of all new actors, why not recast the one that's been giving DC the most headaches? Seriously, if I was the head of DC through all of these problems with Ezra Miller, I would be having an ulcer. They did the right thing with not casting somebody big and bulky, either with the DCU Flash or the CW counterpart. It honestly never made sense that certain renditions of the Flash have looked like they have peak Mr. Olympia Arnold levels of anabolics pumping through their veins. What they need to do is look for somebody on the thinner side, somebody who looks more like a sprinter or a marathon runner. He does not have to be physically imposing, but should be fun and intelligent. I think that we could see Joseph Quinn as the Flash in the new DC universe. His performance as Eddie Munson in Stranger Things makes me think that he would be great with the serious notes that the role would require, while also being able to keep that levity that's needed. Plus, he would be able to play a good Barry Allen who has a past filled with trauma with what happened to his parents. And I think that Joseph Quinn would be able to convey that pain. And if they were going with Wally West in the future projects instead of Barry Allen, I think that Joe Keery would be great for practically the same reasons. Number 9. Martian Manhunter. Since they'll most likely be using CGI instead of practical effects for J'onn J'onzz, if they bring him in, it really doesn't matter, and they would just need to cast somebody who has a good voice. But honestly, I think that Christopher Judge would make a good Martian Manhunter. His version of Kratos from the new God of War games is very different from T.C. Carson, with it being much more calm and relaxed, but it would bring in the stoicism that's needed for the character. J'onn lost his family, and is one of the last survivors of his race. His entire family was lost in a bloodbath on Mars. And the pain that Christopher Judge shows through 2018's God of War when retrieving the Blades of Chaos and shedding a tear, having to relive the moments from his history, would be exactly what we need for this character. Number 10. The Batman. The Dark Knight. The Caped Crusader. Vengeance himself. Out of all of the characters on this list, he is the one who has been recast the most. Although Robert Pattinson is still going to be Bruce Wayne in the sequel to Matt Reeves' The Batman, we will also be seeing a new actor play him in Batman the Brave and the Bold. They've said this Batman will be working with Damian Wayne, so he has to be old enough to have a son who could patrol as Robin. There have been a lot of names floated around out there like John Hamm, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who played Thomas Wayne in Batman vs. Superman, and even before he was blasted into oblivion for being a people-nommer, Armie Hammer. Editing Alex cutting in to say that I do know that Armie Hammer was supposed to play Batman in George Miller's Justice League Mortal film, but that was never made. And that was a name that I did hear floated around quite a bit before we did get Ben Affleck's Batman. But the one who I think should play a live-action Bruce Wayne is Jensen Ackles. He is fantastic as Soldier Boy in The Boys. He played Jason Todd's Red Hood in 2010's Under the Red Hood, the animated film. Plus, he played Batman in The Long Halloween. He has the look down to play a convincing Bruce Wayne. Now, most if not all of these will not happen, and is just who I would cast if I was in charge at DC. To be fair, there are many more characters that still do need to be cast, and so many talented actors that deserve a shot. This is just my list. It may be different from yours, so just know that you are wrong and my list is the only list that counts. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button as it really does help my channel. Hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying DC and Marvel videos, and comment down below if there are any alternate castings that you have thought of. And if you enjoyed this video, click right here to see a video I made about how Venom could be showing up in MCU's Secret Wars, or this one about what James Gunn